Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another session of Reboot Your Business Through Your Business Development Plan from Griffith College, Dublin, Cork, and Limerick in association with Chambers Ireland. Welcome to all the businesses who are joining us throughout the country today, those that are members of Chambers Ireland and other SMEs nationwide. We really appreciate all of the feedback that you've been sending in to date, all of the questions in the response to the open calls that we've put out, the questions on the sessions, and also the lovely messages that you've been sending in to myself and Geraldine and the rest of the team. So thank you so much for your support. We really appreciate it. We do encourage you to and invite you to support us on social media and share your stories and your experiences using the hashtag Reboot2020. We've got a great session for you today with a great lineup. And also, if you check out the website, griffith.ie, and go to the resources page, which is just the second tab on the website, you will be able to view all of the topics, including the bonus topic, and also all of the resources from the videos, the slides, and also the workbook that we hope you're using throughout the series as a practical resource. So with that said, you're very welcome. We do encourage your Q&A throughout. Please use the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen on the right. With that said, I'd like to hand you over to Aoife O'Donnell, who's going to lead today's session. Aoife is a lecturer in Griffith College in the Graduate Business School, and also she is a PR professional and will be joined by a panel today. So thank you so much and enjoy today's session.
Thanks, Michael, and hi, everybody. So I'm just going to share my screen with you here now, just to get things started. So just so to set the scene, really, and so we're all really aware, I mean, we're very aware where we are at the moment at this point in time. But we are in the midst of a crisis, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we're coming through the other side of the crisis. And communicating in a crisis is something that we teach our, we try and train our clients for regularly. And it's thankfully something that doesn't happen that often. You know, we train clients how to communicate in a crisis, and thankfully, hopefully that they don't really experience a crisis that often. But unfortunately, at the moment, every business in this country is experiencing a crisis of one type or another. So, you know, that could be, we obviously all had the crisis where we had to close down, and now we're at the point where businesses are trying to reopen. So, you know, we have businesses such as Woody's who have been all over the news this week, and they are trying to reopen and manage the whole crowd control and manage this whole new world of social distancing as they reopen and to communicate to their customers. We have businesses such as, you know, small hairdressers and beauticians who are trying to reopen and encourage people to come and use their services, but also to let people know that their businesses are safe and it's safe to use the services. And then we have businesses, unfortunately, who have to announce jobs. You know, they're in a crisis because they have to let people go. They have to announce redundancies or whatever it is. And then we've businesses, other businesses who have found themselves where they've had to adapt, and they now have to change all their products and services, and maybe diversify and relaunch the products and services, and maybe try and communicate that and build their business plan all over again. So this is what we're about here today. So we are looking at communicating in these times and trying to develop and build your communications plan. And the common objective that every business has, no matter what type of business you are, or what sort of area you're in, whether you're big, whether you're small, whether you're a medium-sized business, the common objective really at this period of time should be trust. And it's about trusting, encouraging and evoking trust amongst your customers and amongst your clients. So protecting your reputation in this period and encouraging trust amongst your customers and amongst your clients. So what we're going to talk about then is we're going to hopefully give you the tools and help you to build a basic communications plan at this point. So we're going to discuss what should the tone of your communications be. This is a very sensitive time. It's a time that we're not used to. Very often businesses are used to broadcasting their messages and telling people and shouting about their products and services, but not so much listening to their customers and really try and listen to people who are fearful and who need to trust to use your products and services again. So what should the tone of your communications be? What medium should you use? You know, there's some businesses that want to be very active on Instagram, and it's more suitable for their business and appropriate for their business to do so. So we're going to talk about that today. Then what are the mediums that are most appropriate for your business? Is that social? Is it radio? Is it local press? Is it TV? What is it? And then finally, how can you ensure that your company is featured in this media? So how do you get into that media? So you want to be on Instagram and you want to be on, you want to have an interview on local radio, on the business show on local radio. How do you do that and how do you get there? So to discuss these three topics, and also, sorry, just to say to you, at the end of this, at the very end, we're going to have a questions and answers, and we'll encourage you to submit your questions. And also, we're going to just leave you with the communications plan as well, just a sort of a mind map, or just a structure, so you can actually develop your own communications plan at the end of this. So to introduce you then to the two panelists who we have here, we've Susie Horgan from Springboard PR and Melissa Curley from Social Bee Communications, both Corkonians, I believe, and they are experts in the field of public relations and communications, and they are going to take part in our panel discussion today and share their expertise with you. So Susie, if I could ask you to introduce yourself first, and then we'll maybe go through the topics then.
Thanks, Aoife. Morning all. I'm MD of Springboard PR Marketing. We're an agency with offices in Cork and Dublin. We've been fortunate to win a number of awards over the past couple of years for PR campaigns and for our digital campaigns. We work with a diverse range of businesses. I've been fortunate to be a mentor for the Leos and work with the likes of the Rubicon. So I have a lot of experience of working with startups and small micro businesses right through to SME corporates and beyond. So I hope I can give you some insight and some useful tips today to help you reboot your business. It's very challenging for all of us. And whatever I can do to help, I'm more than happy to impart whatever I can today.
Okay, thanks, Susie. And Melissa?
Thanks, Aoife. Good morning, everyone. Delighted to be here as well. So I'm Melissa Curley and Social Bee Communications. So we're freelance consultancy in soft skills and communications training. Helping, I suppose, people, individuals, small businesses and companies communicate, speak on behalf of themselves in terms of having confidence in communicating their story, whether that's for presentations or at meetings or in conversations or working on teams. And then communicating as part of a team as well. And so my focus today really is in terms of the communication, the storytelling aspect of communication. We all need to be able to tell a compelling story, whether you are speaking on behalf of yourself and your career, or whether you are speaking on behalf of your business and your brand. So I'm going to really kind of try and help out with how you can develop a defined tone of voice for your business and how you can tell a compelling story at this time to help your business to be memorable and to engage and connect with your customers and build that trust that Aoife was talking about. Whenever we engage with other people and we connect with them, that's how we build trust. It's no different for your business and your brand. If you want to build trust with your customers now, you have to engage and connect with them. And that would be through having a defined tone of voice and through telling compelling stories right now. So yeah, delighted to be here.
Brilliant. Thanks, Susie. Okay, so what we'll do is then, if that's okay with everybody, we'll talk about tone first, So it's a difficult period that we're in, obviously, for communicating, and many businesses, I'm sure, will have a lot to say. But how do they say it, and what really should the tone of communications be? So maybe we'll start with you, Susie, if you want to take that.
Yeah, thanks, Aoife. So I suppose the tone of voice or the tone that you use has to be, and I think Aoife spoke about this at the very start, you really have to listen. You can't, and there's always a risk, and there is even a risk pre the situation we're in, that people can have a bit of a monologue, can come onto the social channels or can try and pitch to media and not be aware of what's out there at the moment. For every channel you might be trying to communicate on, you have to be aware of the needs of the people you're trying to communicate to. So I use a Venn diagram a lot to explain this, but basically for now, if I even simplify it further, if you try and think about what's in the media, what your customers are interested in, and what you're trying to communicate. And the perfect symmetry of all three is the perfect form of communication. You know, I know a lot of companies are very nervous about going out there at all and seen as being too salesy. If you're communicating about something that is needed, then it's never seen as salesy, it's seen as needed. So it's a challenging thing to get right, but a lot of companies have got it right at the moment. And from small companies to very big companies, some have also got it very wrong. But I think, you know, as long as you're trying and seen to be listening and seen to be aware and not be tone deaf, not go out on a day when there's another announcement that's gone out and it's blatant that your communication isn't aware of it. It's a skill, it takes time, but listen, be aware of what's happening in your community, whatever that might be. If you're a small business, you know, in a town, be very aware of what's happening in the town. I'm sure you would be anyway, and building that into your communications model. And then that grows as the scale of your business and the reach you have grows. Sorry, I'll hand back to you, or Aoife, will I hand over to Melissa?
Sorry, yes, apologies there. I had I was on the dreaded mute button there, so apologies. So yes, thanks, Susie. So Melissa, yeah, do you have any thoughts on that tone?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Susie said there, and I pick up on it. For me, I suppose, I think there's three keys to being compelled, excuse me, being compelling and engaging right now. And it's the first one is about how do you be memorable as a business. And for me, having a defined, there's two elements to that, and it's having a defined tone of voice and being able to tell a good story. In terms of tone, like the story as a business, the story that you tell, they'll change. If you think of your business in terms of a person, people have more than one story, but we generally have one tone of voice. When I'm talking to people, you should recognize me at all times because I'm authentic and I'm just being me. And so the same with your business. And I would say that you should already have a defined tone of voice for your business. And I'm going to assume that you all have businesses, have existing businesses. And so if you don't already know the defined tone of voice of your business, I would say do some work on that. It shouldn't change fundamentally now that we're in a crisis and we're trying to communicate differently. What will be different perhaps is the story that you have to tell right now, but it should still be told with the same defined tone of voice. And how do you tell then the good story? It was like Susie said there about the listening. You have to know how to get conversations started with your customers. And in order to know what conversations to start, you have to tap into what they're thinking and feeling. And then in order to be able to do that, you have to do the research. There's research that you'd have to do there to figure out where are they gathering, what are they talking about, what are they thinking and feeling right now, what are the things that they need to hear from me right now. And then I suppose the third element for me then would be stories. We tell stories because we want to build trust, but we also want to get an emotional connection. It's no different with your business stories. You're trying to build an emotional connection with your customers. So the stories that you tell right now, the best ones, they'll be open and transparent. They will address the conversations and the needs and the worries that people are having right now. They'll be told with your own tone of voice, and they'll have this emotional connection. And to give an example, I suppose, of who's absolutely killing it for me right now, and they don't even have to do a campaign because they are one of the businesses that are out the door, is On Post. And they tick all the boxes. They're telling really good stories right now. They already have a defined tone of voice. They're Irish, they're proud to be Irish, they're community focused. They are us. They are people just like us in the community. But they're creating their emotional connection through the stories that they're telling right now. And if you look, they've done a video called Ireland's Call, and it's incredible. And the thing is, they don't have a big marketing budget for this. We can all do these things. Just because On Post is a big business doesn't mean as a small business we can't tell this story. If you look at that video, it's about 4 minutes long, and it's about 50 of their staff, and they're singing the Ireland's Call, and they've got instruments and everything. And if you watch right through to the end, there's a little bit of Irish dancing happens too. So what that video, it ticks an awful lot of boxes for me. It boosts morale. So not only the country and their customers' morale, but it's boosting the morale of the staff who are working they're working not 24/7, but they're working so hard. It's sincere and it's also entertaining, you know, because I think for all that now is a crisis, people now, we need to be entertained as well, you know, but again, really staying true to whatever your business tone of voice is and what your brand tone of voice is. And just, I suppose, when I'm talking about having a defined tone of voice, if I can give a couple of examples. So if you think Paddy Power, their tone of voice is laddish, it's colloquial, it's the way you talk to your mates down the pub. If you take the Happy Pear, another Irish brand, they're wholesome, they're healthy, but they're also fun. If you take Guinness, Guinness is wise, like a really respected older family member. Okay. And then if I can just throw a curveball in here, there's an Instagram account called Frida Baby, and they're kind of a mummy's page for mummies and babies, but they are very not your typical mummy's page. Their tone of voice is irreverent. It's quite offbeat humor. It's not for everyone, but it's very real and relatable. They're showing the real side of being a mother and having babies. And so they're the defined tone of voice. And then that'll inform how you tell your stories right now. Sorry if I went on there a bit.
That was very good. Thanks a million. Thanks, Melissa. So they're very good points. Yeah, and it's good to get some examples. And we'll come back then to examples then at the end. At the end of this. So just to go into then the medium. So the medium, I mean, obviously there's different brands. So you were mentioning there, Melissa, Frida, and I think it was Frida, and
Frida Baby.
And On Post, and all these different types of brands. And you have the big companies, and you've got small, medium-sized companies, and whatever. Not everybody has the resources to communicate on a wide scale, and they have to be very targeted, especially small companies. You have to be very targeted and know exactly, you know, you don't have much time, you don't have the resources, and you have to be very targeted. So you have to know exactly, maybe just hit one or two types of media. So in terms of the types of media, and I might ask Susie to come in on this one then. So Susie, and we'll come back to you, Melissa, again. But on the types, and if you wouldn't mind muting yourself, sorry, because I know Michael will not be happy. So the types of media then that would be most suitable for different types of brands. You know, what media do you think is the most suitable at this point in time? What mediums should people be using, companies?
I suppose if we just take a step back a second, and I know obviously media, as in the ones you've listed there, radio, etc., are extremely important. But if we just take a step back and look at your owned media. So what we would do in Springboard is always look at owned, earned, and paid. So if you take your owned media, that is so powerful. It's incredibly powerful, so much powerful than it was a few years ago, and even more powerful now. You really need to look at your website, make sure your website's up to date, make sure your information's up to date. You know, simple things like that will make a big difference. The first thing I'm going to do if I'm trying to find out if a business is reopened is Google it. And then I'm going to go and see your website, maybe even just your homepage. You could just have a landing page that gives me some direction as to what's happening next with your business. That would be invaluable. I would also say, depending on the business that you are, email marketing is vitally important. And a lot of people are very anti-email marketing because they feel that there's so many of them and, oh my God, am I going to join that bandwagon? But actually, I do read emails that are relevant to me. I don't like being spammed, and I don't like receiving information that isn't relevant to me, like Saul. But I do like receiving information that's relevant. And as long as you have done what Melissa, you know, very clearly spoke about there, you know, have your storytelling for your tone of voice, and it's right, and listening to your audience, well, then you're going to hit the mark. You're going to send me information that's relevant to me. I would also say, put a bit of thought into your content. So if you know what my care abouts are, that's the term I would use for what I care about. If you know what those are, well, then think about how are you going to communicate that to me. So the beauty of now is, whilst you do have, and I totally agree that Unpost is doing a phenomenal job, but while you do have big brands with amazing campaigns, you know, and I'm quite sure, I mean, I run a small business, you're sitting there going, sure, I don't have the budgets to do that. The beauty of now is A, we're all completely digital, and B, we're very understanding in relation to the kind of content that people produce. So if it's not perfect, I'm not judging you. I'm not going, oh, jeepers, that video now is a bit shaky, or, you know, whatever the case may be. Something on an iPhone that's true reflection of you and your business is invaluable, and don't be afraid to do that. We are so supportive of local businesses at the moment. You know, we're hyper aware of that, and it's only going to grow. So use that, and don't be afraid to build out your content and use your owned platforms to convey that. Also on social media, you know, it's an age-old thing, but don't blanket bomb. Don't try and be across 4 platforms and wonder why you're not cutting through. Pick one. What's your audience? Who's your audience? And where are they? If they're on Instagram, put your effort there. If they're on Facebook, put your effort there. Or if you're B2B, head on over to LinkedIn and put all your effort there. But don't try and do all things, because you'll be driven mad. And, you know, we're all trying to run businesses at the end of the day. Then if you do have a nugget, and actually this just happened for a client of ours this week, they'd written a blog post that was very relevant to the reopening of businesses, and the Sunday Business Post are taking the blog post verbatim. So that will happen. If you are really identifying a need for your client base, the media will also see it as a need as well. You know, it's not for everyone to go on to radio, but, you know, now's the time to be courageous, have your thoughts in your head, and don't be afraid to pitch, especially to your local radio station. They're only gagging for the information. They're dying to hear, and they're dying to support you. So don't be afraid of that. If you have an advertising budget, now I would say is also the time to use it, and your bang for buck will go very far. But I would say start with your owned media, and start with what content you have to develop, and be true to yourself. If you're not a writer, don't try and write a blog. You know, maybe you could do a podcast. They're very easily done. You don't need a very detailed hardware to do it these days, and video on an iPhone is perfectly acceptable. But yes, then if you have a good story, you can amplify it further and push it out. And one good piece of content is what we call evergreen content. It should never die. You should be able to use that content again and again and again. So if you actually sit down and put a bit of effort in, ask, if you've colleagues, ask your colleagues, what kind of questions are you getting at the moment? Yeah, I keep getting that question as well. That's what you should be talking about. That's what people care about, and that's what gets you traction.
Brilliant. That's really good. I love evergreen content. It's a really good term. So I'm going to rob that one, I think. So in terms of just that's a really good point. And just your point there about polished approaches, you know, and I think Melissa was talking about that yesterday as well, in terms of, you know, in the public relations industry or the communications industry, you know, the old days, we would have been very, you know, that would have been our business, you know, developing very polished quotes and approaches for people and making them look as good as they possibly can. And the one thing that I found in this era that we're in, the media do not want that, and customers don't want that. The public don't want that. So they want to see, whereas they do, you know, they want the correctly positioned and the nice, you know, the messages to be correctly positioned. They want to be treated with compassion, and, you know, they want empathy, and they want honesty. And maybe that sort of polished performer doesn't really correlate with that. So yeah, so Melissa was talking yesterday there just in relation to another brand we won't mention, but in terms of sort of having a polished performance, and maybe the polished performance is just the polished veneer is just too much in this era. But really good. Thanks Susie. Do you have anything to add, Melissa?
I do indeed. Yeah. I'm actually going to thank Susie. I'm going to use myself as an example of what Susie said there. Actually, a couple of things. I 100% agree on pick a platform and own that one. I'm an example of that myself. I'm mainly B2B. I'm on LinkedIn. I feel like I understand LinkedIn better than I ever understood any other social platform. It suits me. And so I put my time and my effort in there. And what I did at the start of this, and it was such poor quality, because I'm not the type of person that uses my phone for taking selfies or videos at all. But I have my 83-year-old dad living with me, and just to tell a story. And I think I didn't realize it was going to resonate so highly with other people. But at the start of the lockdown, trying to get the older, over 70s to cocoon, it was heartbreaking, and it was really anxiety inducing. And so it was really frustrating. And I walked down to the end of the house one day. I was wondering, where is he? You know, like he was a child going, where is he? And he was up on a ladder, a wooden ladder that I'm pretty sure is half rotted, in his slippers, up at a big windowsill. He was painting a windowsill, and he had a bucket that was just filled with twigs that was holding the ladder at the bottom, nobody at the bottom. And I went out, and I was up high at the window, and I just saw him, and I went to take a video with my phone, and I showed it, and I was only taking the video to share it with my niece, right? Because my niece and him are very close, and I was sharing it with my niece to show her my frustration. And so the video is silent, except for he spots me then and has a big smile, and he's like, "Oh, I'm up painting." And it's I think it was an 18-second video, and I didn't do anything with it because, like, I can't make things polished. Editing isn't my thing. But I just thought I put it up on my LinkedIn, because I was at that time, I was kind of after evolving, because my work had evolved since this happened, and started delivering online training in resilience. And so I put this post up, and the post was basically, I can't remember now, it was about my heart was broken, would you look at this, but look, like the resilience of him or whatever. 36,000 views and hundreds of comments later. It ran over for a couple of weeks, but what it really tapped into was, it tapped into the story that other people were having at the moment themselves, their personal story of struggling to get their own over 70s. It did that, but it also tapped into, look at that generation and look at their resilience, and they're who we have to look up to now and aspire to be. So it actually told a story, and in fairness, I won't give myself all the credit. I didn't intend for all of that at all, but it tapped into a very human story that people were having. And so people didn't care about the video quality at all. And it led to people sharing stories of their own. And so that cost me nothing. Now, I'm not saying you go viral with any 18-second video, but I didn't try and put it anywhere else either. I put it up on my LinkedIn, and that was enough for me. I'll tap back into a couple of things kind of that I was thinking when Susie was saying, in terms of your own content and your website. And she's so right. Now, don't go looking at my website because it's awful at the moment. But the reason I'm mentioning this is, if you haven't already applied for the Trading Online voucher, and I'm sure most of you are aware of it, but I hope you're all aware now also that the Trading Online voucher at the moment, it used to be matched funding of 50%. It's now, at the moment, because of the crisis, it's 90% matched funding. So if you pay $2,750 to get your website upgraded to the best that it can be, so that, like Susie says, when people go looking for you to see if you're open, then the LEOs will pay $2,500. So you only end up paying $250, and they're doing that until September. So if you haven't applied, get that application in now. Another thing Susie said, and I do want to mention it, the are you open? It's such, we assume people will know. So are you letting people know on whatever channels you're on that you are open for business? Because we assume people know, but people don't know, and especially the way things are now. So the very start of your story in terms of connecting with people is letting them know that you're open. And then another thing on from that, I would say, is, have you evolved? My business has fundamentally evolved. I wasn't planning on ever delivering online training. Well, it wasn't in my head. And now I'm delivering online training. And so for me now, there's a new part to my story now, to my business story. And so now I need to tell my clients that not only am I open for business, but I'm also delivering online training. So my business has evolved, and there's new elements to my service. So make sure, if your story has changed, that you're updating your customers and your clients to the changes in your story, and don't just assume because it's in your head that they should know. Those are my thoughts. Oh yeah, and just in terms of what Susie was saying as well, in terms of the media, at the moment, I think media has been very kind and generous, a lot of the media, to the SMEs, the sector, because they know that you've been so hard hit. And I just took this as an example. It's from the Irish Examiner, and it's the menu, Joe McNamee. And he's promoting, and even says it here, for as long as COVID-19 continues to affect the Irish food world's ability to trade as normal, we're delighted to continue to offer this column to feature businesses, And so I know that's in terms of food and drink and hospitality. But there's other, like, I think the Business Post as well, they've always been really generous in terms of small businesses, but get in touch, get in touch with them if you have a story to tell, because I think there's potential there for some free advertising if you ask for it. Yeah, that's my points for now.
That's brilliant. Yeah, thanks a million, Melissa. And just to, I mean, both of you there mentioned owned media, and just to clarify for people who aren't that au fait with the various terms, so owned media is really what we call, your own websites, anything that you own as a brand, as a company, whatever. So it's really your own website, which, your own blog, your own channels, things that you own yourself. Your paid for media is advertising, and then what we call earned media is where public relations comes in. So this is sort of the you know, the media opportunities, the interviews with you in say what Melissa's talking about there in the newspaper or online or whatever it is. So, but just in terms of just clarifying what owned media is there for you. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so then just coming then to the last the last question there, or the last topic for the moment. So what do you both think are the best tools or the most appropriate tools, or what would you suggest are the most useful in terms of trying to get into that media? So I want to be in, you know, I'm a small business. I'm a hairdressing salon. I'm going to be opening up, and I want to tell people about what we've done, what's different, what's changed, and I want to let them know that it's safe. Is it? I want to let them know that it's safe, and so this is how do I communicate that with my customers, and how do I get into the media specifically?
Will I take that first?
Yes, please. Yes.
Just something I want to make everyone aware of as well, just going back to Melissa's point on our reopen, be aware that Google, so if you're on Google and if you have a business page on Google, they put us up all as closed. I don't know why. Google closed us all. So I only noticed it after week 1. I'm obviously working remotely, as is my whole team. So just be aware of what Google's saying about your business as well, and just Google yourselves. And make sure you manage that aspect, because now more so than ever, it's fundamental. Going to Aoife's point, it really is the amalgamation of everything we've been talking about. You really have to be, it's about being slightly courageous, because I know a lot of you, it'll be outside your comfort zone, but you know, you may want to be in RT Radio 1, but is that actually right for your business? You know, you need to think where your target audience is and what they're listening to, just like social media. You know, you're not going to be on Instagram if you're B2B. So make sure you're in the right space for where you need to be for your audience, because otherwise it'll just be, sure, wasn't it great Susie was on radio, but actually it's not going to make a difference to my business. So make sure you're targeting the right publications, the right radio, the right online platforms for your business. I wouldn't go off and write a big long article. I wouldn't go off and write a big long story. I would say a 2-sentence email to the right person is what you need. A lot of people will go off and they'll write something really detailed and then be, you know, oh, that didn't land. What a waste of time. Because to be honest, that is a waste of time. Pitch the idea first. So I'm a business in blah, I'm opening up next week. These are the challenges I've faced and this is how I've overcome them. I'd love to tell you a bit more about that story. They may be writing a feature. They may do a special story on their own of you. They may ask you to write a guest article. Whatever it is, pitch your story first, and then you'll get the return you're looking for, rather than doing all the work up front. Listen, be aware. So we've got, you know, we now know what media outlets are important to your business. You know, listen to the radio station. If you get onto who you pitch to in radio is the producer, who then puts you onto a researcher. But make sure you're not, you know, again, like everything in life, you know, you're not going to bulldoze your way into a situation. You're going to say, listen, I heard you were asking for local businesses to come on. I'm a local business. I'd love to tell you a bit about my story. They would only be delighted. You know, especially radio. The difference with print is that in difficult times when there's less advertising, you'll notice newspapers are thinner. They just have less room for stories as well then. Radio always has to fill the airtime. They always have to fill their airtime. So there is loads of opportunities, and don't be afraid. They're not looking to catch you out. They're not they're looking to really support you. I would say for most businesses, local radio is where you want to be. Obviously then if you're, you know, maybe professional services, whatever, where you're not just specific to local, then look beyond that. But maybe test your toe in a bit of local radio first. As I referenced earlier, you know, we had a client who wrote a blog post on the health of your workforce going back to work. You know, we literally sent it on to whet the appetite of the business post, and they said, no, actually, we'll just take this blog for a baton. So what I said at the outset is, you know, first pitch and then go into more detail on the story. But if you have existing content, maybe you're sitting here now, and like Melissa, you made a video or you did something during this period, and you're like, you know, that's actually not I'm kind of impressed, because maybe you've had more time to think about your story and how you can tell it. Don't be afraid to just link that and send it on to different media outlets. There's also loads of online platforms. There's fantastic online platforms locally in each city, and there's also national online platforms who are really looking for stories and ideas. What online platforms love is other media that goes with it. For example, a picture or a short video or a little graphic. They love all of that. You'll notice it yourself when you scroll down through media stories. You'll see they'll break up the text, because sure, we're all goldfish and we don't want to read loads of text. So the more you can give, the more likely that is to get coverage. Yeah, I mean, I'm very open to any questions anyone has at the end. You know, it is challenging if you haven't written press releases before. So if you're actually, I mean, going back to the very start, if you are opening in the next couple of weeks or in the plans to open, build into your plan to actually announce it publicly. Send out a press release. A press release, all you have to remember for a press release is the who, the how, the where, the what, the when in the first paragraph. It's not an article, it's a statement of information. You're giving information to the media. You know, Susie Horgan Inc. is opening on the X date. We are practicing social distancing by doing Y. You can book your appointment here. We look forward to welcoming all our customers back. Something as simple as that, with, you know, attributed quote to whoever the business owner is. And you can find samples of press releases all over the web. And it's you know, it's written in the third person. So it's you as a separate entity, not you personally writing, I am opening my business. But I would highly recommend you all do that and send it to your local media or send it beyond, and it might just be picked up. Because once again, going back to, you know, do not assume the general public knows what's going on in your business. I can't tell you how many people have asked me if I'm working. Yeah, I'm very much so working. All my friends, every time I meet them, are you working? Are you working? You know, everyone assumes we're all sitting at home. You know, it's all over the radio that people are bored sitting at home. So we're all, you know, and unfortunately, there are plenty of people who are in a situation that they can't work, but there are plenty of people who are trying to work through the situation. But the assumption is that no one is working. So, you know, what can seem very obvious to you is actually needs to be communicated as well. Sorry, that was a bit rambly.
That was very good.
Started with the press release.
Yeah, no, that's very good. I'm just off to take my banana bread out of the oven. So
no, your sourdough.
Yeah, my sourdough. Yeah, all of them. And that's really good. Thanks a million. So yeah, and writing a press release, and just to echo what you said, you know, it is really important when you're writing as well, that, you know, if you know that you're not writing isn't your skill, then find somebody whose skill it is, because the worst thing you could do, well, it's not the worst thing you could do, but it's not great if you go into the media with, you know, really badly written press release. So not only will they not know what you're talking about, but you've also damaging your reputation in the process. So just make sure that when you do approach, you don't go out like wildfire everywhere throwing out, you know, just some few words you've cobbled together. Just make sure you do it correctly, is what I would say, and just think about it and be strategic. Just to echo your thoughts there, Susie. So we'll go to you, Melissa, as well.
Yeah. And it's so interesting, Susie, there where you were saying your friends are asking, are you open? If your friends are thinking you might be closed, then your customers are certainly thinking that you might be closed, you know. So it's really worth kind of just, it seems so obvious, but we make so many really simple, basic assumptions. I would agree with Susie. I think if you think about it now, and you think about, we've had a mindset shift, I think, collectively back towards local and community, and we're all really starting to think about how we can be more connected to people and to our communities locally, but also how we can stay informed. And I want to be informed on a granular level. And a granular level for me is local. And so, yes, I watch the medical doctors in the evening, but I tune into local radio now, and I never tuned into local radio before, because I care about what the local radio is saying about what's happening, particularly in my community. And so I think an awful lot more people are tuning into local radio. And like Susie says, local radio is so much more approachable. They would be only delighted to have you on, you know, and to show their support and stuff. And local radio gets listened to as well. And so if you wanted to go nationally, it could give you a good springboard to get onto national radio as well. I would say, I know it was probably said earlier, but just in terms of this, about how to get on to the media or the medium you want to use, choose your platform. If you're not already on a platform, I mean, if you're already on platforms, then keep using those platforms. I'm not about to bounce off LinkedIn now. I'm going to keep it as my platform, but make sure you've chosen platforms and make sure you've done your research on your customer base. Where are they gathering and having their conversations? Because that's the platform that you need to be on. And that does require a bit of research on your part. But it's well worth it, because then you can be so much more targeted and effective in the conversations that you're having and that you're starting with them. So definitely choose your platform, which one you want to use. And then I would say, in terms of the video engages, we want to build trust, and we want to engage, and we want to connect with people, with our customers. The videos that I'm seeing right now, and this is the thing again, they don't have to be professional. In fact, I'd rather they weren't. But another one on Post was, it's a 3-minute video, and it's with one of their postmen, and he's been a postman for donkey's years with them, and they have him sitting on a chair at his front door, and he's just been videoed, and he's talking, and he spends 3 minutes talking about his job at An Post now and how things have changed and about the people, and it's just lovely. It's like you were having a conversation with them, and there's nothing high spec about the video at all. And so I think video as a medium for, and across whatever medium that you're going to use. Those are my thoughts on that. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Thanks, Melissa. That's really good. Okay, so in terms of then the really, we're going to go to questions and answers in a few minutes, actually. So if people have, there's questions coming in there which are really good, so we're going to get to them in a few minutes. And we are just before we do that, then keep sending in your questions. And just before we do that, then maybe just to put you on the spot, do you have, could you both maybe give an example of an organization or a company that you think has actually performed really well in this period? It could be just, you know, when the lockdown initially happened, or, you know, as we kind of started to look at the reopening season, as we're now calling it. So any examples of some good companies? Whoever wants to take that whoever has one can jump in there.
Well, SuperValue and Musgraves in general have done a phenomenal job. You know, they were the first I saw of really embracing taking on allowing older people certain times in. They have really, and it's not just even their communications, it's their actions. A lot more of their supermarkets are now either click and collect or delivery, which must have been incredibly challenging to turn around in such a short time. I really commend they've had the fun staff videos as well that have been very impromptu. They've been on TikTok, they've been everywhere just showing a bit of fun. But they've also just really helped support the government and everyone else in getting them key messages out. So I think a lot of all the supermarket chains, in fairness, did that very quickly, but SuperValue really stood out for me.
Yeah, and just on that, Susie, then they had a sort of a mini crisis within that, because if you look at their sort of corporate social responsibility and their Tidy Towns competition, if that's what you call it, but that went south along with everything else. So they had to manage that then as well, and manage the whole communications around that as well, which was sort of a little mini crisis within a crisis for them.
No, it's very challenging. I mean, I have a number of clients who've had to deal with extreme situations, and you really do. I think what the key point is, well, I've really admired in companies, and there's, I don't specifically want to name any companies that I've worked with through their crisis, but I suppose what I would say is the ones who've come out best are the ones who've shown their human element. I think it was Woody's the other day came out with not having kids in the store. And, you could understand why they said that, but then there was such a backlash. They immediately came out and said, look, we made a mistake. We shouldn't have said that. And I admire that. No one judged them then. We all went, fair enough, you made a mistake. Listen, we're in a terrible situation. We understand you can make a mistake. And I suppose we have to be not afraid of mistakes, but we have to be very honest when we make them. And I think the companies that do that and continue to do that, and anytime you should do that as an organization, but we'll really notice it. I've worked with some small companies. I work with a company here in Cork, an SME called Eliver. They're a security company, and they immediately turned around. They have emergency response units because they're a facility management company, and they have emergency response units for their facility management. And immediately they turned around and said, you know what, we're actually going to get onto Share. We have a relationship with them, and we're going to offer for our mobile response units to actually go and do their shopping, do you know, people who are part of Share's shopping. And I just thought that was phenomenal. That happened within a week. And that was just because it was part of the ethos of the company. They were so quick to change. So I think it's good to show that it's not just the big corporates that can make a difference. You know, I've had companies who've donated PPE. I've had you know, and I've had companies say to me, look, we want to do this, but it's a bit small. Is it a bit small? Because you hear of the companies doing amazing things and huge things, and everyone's like, that's phenomenal. You know, you have that, their name escapes me, but the company in Dublin that makes ventilators, and they put their IP, they put their designs online and said, have at it. Everyone make them. We need them. Make them now. I mean, that is just unbelievable. That's so positive. Aoife, you might remember the name of the company now, but unfortunately it escapes me at the moment. But it was just really, really impressive, the turnaround of what people did. And what I would say to all of you, and I did have a sneaky peek at some of the questions there, and I know people are asking, when should I go out? Or when should I say I'm reopening? I wouldn't wait to say I'm reopening. Make sure you're continuing to communicate. And even if it's a tiny, tiny little thing, even if it's something you're doing as an organization, if you're supporting something, if you're, you know, whatever the case may be, if you're painting something, just put it out there, you know, getting all ready, painting, whatever. Don't wait till the last minute to start speaking to your organization. It's like if you were about to launch a campaign and you said, right, we're launching this brand on Tuesday and we're going live for the first time ever on Instagram on Tuesday. And then you're like, oh, nobody saw it. Of course they won't see it. They're not looking. There's no one following you. There's no one watching. So you have to maintain your communications throughout, and the company, and there's numerous companies who are doing that very well. And I would say, you know, make sure to keep chatting, and don't be worried if it isn't earth shattering. You know, it doesn't have to stop the world. It just has to be of interest to your clients and customers.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Susie. So Woody's, I put up a slide there. So Woody's was
oh, I think Aoife's frozen there.
I thought it was just me because I froze earlier on, and I was like, am I frozen or is Aoife frozen? This is the world we're living in now, and
yeah,
it is what it is. And I think the most important thing is always just stay calm.
Maybe Melissa, do you want to take up the point on examples?
I'll jump in there, and so then Aoife can come back and we can remind her she was on the Woodies chat. And yeah, so I'm going to give a couple of examples, the ones that are stand out for me, and they tick my boxes in terms of the three things that I had said. Number one, they're memorable by having a defined voice and telling compelling stories. Number two, they are getting conversations going that matter to the people that they're trying to communicate and sell to. And number three, they're building that emotional connection. And so my absolute standout, and I've said it already, is On Post. And from the very beginning, they have done good things from a really authentic, genuine place, with people and the community at the heart of what they're doing. And so their hashtag right now, their hashtag send love, their hashtag now imagination. So what they're doing is they're keeping us entertained, they're keeping us connected, and they're keeping our children entertained, which is huge for people as well. But also the videos, the stories that they're telling, they're very human, they're very community focused, they're very proud to be Irish, they're connecting us and supporting us. So I just think their whole campaign, and like I was saying earlier, they're a business that doesn't need at the moment necessarily. Now, I suppose you always need to keep the conversation going, but they could do without promoting because they are out the door. Another one, and I know, and the thing is, I'm going to mention another really big brand, but these brands aren't doing well because they have a huge budget. You can have loads of money and no great ideas. The beauty, I think, of the world we live in today is that a bit of creativity can go a long way depending on the platforms that you're picking, you know. And so my second one would be Guinness. I think Guinness have a very clearly defined tone of voice. The story they're telling at the moment is, you stay home and stay safe and we'll toast again. They did that little video about we'll toast again, but not right now. And what they're saying is, we miss you, we know you miss us. Until we're together again, we'll toast differently. And if you look at their Instagram account, it's beautiful pictures, but the pictures at the moment are about how to pour the perfect can. And so it's about how can you enjoy when you can't have Guinness, when you can't come to us for Guinness. How can you have good Guinness where you are? So it still ties in very much with their stories. And then the third one is a bit of a curveball. The doctors who are communicating with us through this crisis. I watch the 6 o'clock news every night with the doctors, with Dr. Tony Houlihan and Paul Reid and Colin Henry. And the hashtag flatten the curve, we all got behind that story because there was humanness, but there was compassion and there was honesty and transparency and humanity behind that story, which is why I think we all, in Ireland for sure, but as a world, got behind the flatten the curve. And for me, the communication, they're excellent, the doctors, especially Dr. Houlihan. It's open, honest, transparent communication. There's no question he's not willing to address. He wants to keep us informed. He's doing the right balance between being open and honest and direct, but also trying to give people a bit of hope in the stories that they're telling. And so I think they're communicating really well at the moment in this crisis. So yeah, that's what I think.
I think we've lost Aoife temporarily. So I suppose we can, if it suits, we can go to questions. Yeah, I can just pull them up here. Oh, your dad gets a shout out there, Melissa.
Oh, do you know what? He's generally the central character of any story I tell from a business point of view, Susie. He is a character, but I should find the video and I'll share it in a link actually with Michael. It's funny.
This is an interesting question from Simon. Simon is asking, if we only go to one platform, is there a danger of missing out? And I might take that question in the first instant, Melissa, if that's okay with you. I think, as he's used here in his question, you might be a B2B company, but you still want to generate interest from the end users who will be on Insta, FB, and Snapchat. And I suppose the point is, if you're B2B and you're a small business and you're trying to build your client base, that should be your first priority. And if you've mastered LinkedIn and you've a steady following and you're able to post regularly and you feel like I have this covered, then look at other platforms. Don't try and do them all at once though, because I've just seen it so many times. People are, they assume social media won't take a lot of time. It does. And they think that they can, use a system that they can post across all platforms in one go. That doesn't work, unfortunately. They're wily to that. And even if you post to Instagram and Facebook at the same time, the tags and hashtags you have on Instagram won't translate on Facebook, etc. So, I would say definitely look at having look beyond one platform, absolutely, but not until you have your primary platform covered, if that makes sense.
Hi guys, I might while we're waiting for Aoife just to come back in, I can pose the questions to you that have come in, but just to say we've had fantastic feedback so far and the points have been so good, and a great link with the session that myself and Stephen presented yesterday in terms of marketing, staying on one channel, thinking about your message, the evergreen content. Those are fantastic points. So please do share on social media, hashtag reboot 2020. So we'll have a look at some of the questions now. And you're totally right, Melissa, like this is the world that we're living in. So we keep going. So there's a question here from Joanne. What platforms are best to host and gain interest in podcasts? From Joni McAuliffe. Apologies there, sorry. If somebody'd like to come in for that one.
To host podcasts on.
What platforms are best to host or gain interest in podcasts?
Okay, I have limited experience of this now, Susie. I'll jump over to you. I believe you need to have a certain amount of followers on a platform or subscribers before to a podcast before certain platforms will take you on. I think there's a minimum with a lot of the platforms. So it depends. I don't know. That's as much. That's as much as I know. To answer that question.
Yeah. I mean, I think the question is, yes, to what Melissa was saying for Apple or whatever, it's all about listeners, and that's how you build up your following on it, and they push you up, and you'd love to be podcast of the week or whatever the terminology is there. But I would say look at a podcast like any other piece of content, the best place you could actually house that content is on your own website. Because ultimately you want to own whoever, if people are coming to your website, you can then capture their data, ask for their email address, whatever the case may be. You can do what's called wall the content. So I have an amazing podcast on how to reboot your business in 2020. You wall that content. Now I have what's called a marketing qualified lead, and I can then go back to you again, and you're within GDPR. You have your nice tick the box. So I would say house it on your own website, capture it on whatever platform you want, MP3 or whatever it might be. That's not a problem, as long as it's playable, and talk to your developer about the capabilities and the speeds on your website, and then push it out through your own platform. So email marketing, your own social channels. So I wouldn't be worried about being, unless you want to be podcast famous and then be on Apple and everything else. But if you're just trying to communicate to your existing or potentially grow your client base, then use your own platforms. I hope that's answering the question.
Yes, I think so. And I think with the podcast as well, there's some really nice microphones that you can get online. For example, a Yeti, which might cost about €100 or something, or you could order something from Amazon or maybe even a local retailer if there's somebody delivering. But it's worthwhile having a look at the equipment as well, I would say, from my own experience.
Just showing you there, my lovely. I got it when this all happened. It just goes to show kind of where my priorities are, really. I do like the sound of my own voice, do I? One of the first things I bought to deliver online training was a very decent microphone. And so I believe when I was doing my research, this is actually one that podcasters would use. And it was, what was it? It was a little over 100, I think. But another thing I would say is maybe try and be invited as a guest onto other people's platforms, onto other people's podcasts and stuff as well, because I do think a lot of the people that I listen to their podcasts, I've heard them being interviewed as guests on other podcasts that I already listen to. And if I'm interested in what they have to say, I'll go look for them myself on their own platforms. And so I think it's great if what you're looking for is to kind of gain, I suppose, exposure and a different audience to the one you currently have, then it could be smart to try and get interviewed on other people's podcasts as well.
Yes, and what you were saying there about the authentic tone of voice and being human, I'm not sure if it was yourself, Melissa, or Susie who mentioned that point, but what do you think of Aldi's catchphrase or slogan recently? You look after yourselves, we look after the shelves.
I think it's very catchy. I do like things that I like alliteration. I'm an ex-teacher, so I like when I tell people to think about, if they're thinking about their tone of voice, like what words would you use to describe yourself? And there's a couple, that Frida baby that I talked about, their Instagram is boogers, bums and beyond. So you can tell they're an irreverent page already, but I like the cupcake bloke who's a Dublin bakery, and he's funky, fresh and fabulous. I like the alliteration. So with the Aldi one as well, things that are catchy stick, for good or for bad, you've jingles in your head, even if you hate them. But it also stays true to what they've been saying all along. This isn't a new tone of voice for them, Michael, which I think is, we can smell inauthentic, and we don't like it. And so that's why you have to be really, really clear on what is your tone of voice. And if you really think in terms of your business as a person, if they were to sit down at a table with my customers, what would they sound like? What would they say? How would they speak? And that's who they should be. And that's the way that they should be speaking to the customers, with that tone of voice.
Brilliant.
Welcome back, Aoife.
I think Aoife's back with us now. Welcome back, Aoife. Apologies for anyone who experienced the crash there. We just had the internet go down. So I'll hand back to Aoife now, and thank you so much, guys.
Yeah, apologies. I don't know if that was me or if it was a more widespread thing, but I get the impression it might have just been the internet. So a live demonstration of a crisis for everybody, and also a demonstration of what goes on in rural Ireland or anywhere really where there's bad broadband. But actually the broadband here is quite good normally. So I don't know what that was. But anyway, we're back. I'm also probably on a hotspot, so I'm hoping that everything goes okay. So have you started doing the questions and answers? We might go through the questions and answers.
We have, Aoife, we part answered Simon's, and we answered one more from Joni, I think, in relation to podcasts.
Okay. Now, in a further development, I can't see the questions and answers. So would you mind, Susie? Yeah.
Not at all.
Taking on the questions, and I'll help out.
No, not at all. Do I answer? Sorry, new Zoomer. Do I click answer live when we're answering them, just so we don't repeat ourselves?
No, we'll answer.
Okay, we're okay.
And then Michael will speak, and then Michael can jump in if needs be on the tech side.
Perfect. So there's a question here from Event Waiter. Hello, Ken here, I think, from Event Waiter. We are in hospitality, and realistically, we won't be back to work until August. So should we be advertising now or waiting a little closer to the time? I can start, or
you take it away. You start, Susie.
So I suppose I suppose it goes back to my earlier point about, don't just start when you're about to open. Try and keep the conversation going. I'm not sure what platforms you use in Event Waiter now, but if you have a built social media, if you have email marketing, rather than spending on advertising this far out, I would just start communicating your plans with your existing customers, your suppliers, things like that. And then letting them know your timeline to reopen. Obviously, everyone is fully aware that this can change. It's not set in stone. It has to be somewhat flexible. But I would suggest that now that the government has come out with their plans, and now that we are in phase one, I would suggest you need to let your customers know what your plans are, albeit that they may have to be adapted again. If you then want to go with a broader advertising campaign, I would suggest you do that closer to the date of opening. But I would maintain conversation now, and I wouldn't stay completely mute until the time of opening.
I agree with that. And there was some businesses, I suppose, stopped talking for a few weeks while they, I suppose, assimilated the whole stress of the situation. But I think it's really important to keep the conversation going all throughout this. Otherwise, you need to stay in people's heads. We're easily forgotten, that might come as an unpleasant surprise to some people, but we are easily forgotten. And if I can just reference a couple of coffee shops, I think in Cork, Duke's Coffee Shop in Idaho. If you follow them maybe on Twitter or Instagram, I've been following Richard in Idaho Coffee for a long while. I like his tweets and his conversations are very much whatever's in his head that day, whatever's come into his head that he wants to talk about and discuss with the wider community, I guess. And I like that because I talk from whatever's just come into my head as well. And so I kind of connect with that. But you see, they've kept the conversation going, and they've involved their communities in the conversation about the 2 meter distance and what it'll mean for their businesses. And, so they're keeping in touch by keeping the conversation going with their customers, and I think, I don't know the analytics behind it, but I think with social, especially if your platform is social and if you have a fairly good following, I think if you go quiet for a while, it's harder to pick up the conversation again and get heard, because I think it's maybe the algorithms that you're no longer a kind of a top voice being heard. So I think it's important to keep chatting. Aoife?
Yeah, okay. Well, what it might do then is go to the next question, and what I might get you, maybe Susie, you just might read the question and then you might read it out for me because I can't see them. So we're going to have to improvise. Yeah. I'm sorry, but this is just where we're at.
Sorry, Aoife,
Thanks.
I must have read it in my brain. Okay, apologies. So we have one from Malta. How should a business determine the right time to reopen its service to its clients in order to maintain a balance between safety, trust of its clients and sales? I mean, that does depend on the country you're in and what the determination is in that country. I think you would have to be compliant within whatever the regulations are there. I have heard of companies of all sizes, you know, for example, in Ireland, corporates have been told to stay at home unless you absolutely have to go to work. And there has been some instances, I know, of businesses putting it to their staff, would you like to go back to the office? And if so, when? And majority of them have come back and said, I don't want to go back. I'm quite happy working from home. There's been a number of companies who've publicly said it has not affected their how productive people are, so they're in no rush. Obviously, that's very specific to an office-based job. If you're not in an office-based job, it will be determined by whatever the regulations are, I would say. So it's kind of, unfortunately, there is no perfect answer for that one, in my opinion. But I'll hand over to you guys to see. What do you think?
Well, it does, of course, depend on the industry, but I think it comes back to the building trust. And I think if you're looking to open up again, I think you have to build trust. If you have staff, you need to build trust with them first so that they feel comfortable and sure that their health and safety is going to be put first. And then it's building the trust with the customers after that. But if you have your staff on board, that the environment that you've created is a safe one, then you can convey that trust to the wider community as well. So I think for me, it would be those steps. That's if it's retail, of course. And again, yeah, like Susie said, it depends the country you're in and the industry that you're in as well.
Yeah, and I think trust is really important, and trust is really where this is at, you know. So by using, you know, empathy, and by you know, appearing compassionate, it's really, really important that you do that, and before you even think about your communications planning. So and it brings us back then to the tone of voice and the tone of the communications as well. So and obviously, yeah, I mean, I think it's really important to adhere to whatever the situation is in individual countries. You know, so it's really important to ensure that you mentioned, you acknowledge the public health policy and what it is, and that you're sticking rigidly to that. And within that, you're going to make sure that it's safe for your customers, it's safe for your clients. You know, and that's really the main message, really, is trust. Okay, so another question, Susie?
Yeah, so there's one here from Dave Barry, a question for all. From a sectorial perspective, if you felt a non-client was temporarily getting their comms wrong during COVID-19, would you reach out to them in a constructive fashion? Do you want to start with that one, Aoife?
Oh, thanks. Well, I think if a non-client was getting their communications wrong, it would largely depend on what market they were communicating in. My speciality, I suppose, is where we work really is healthcare communications. So, you know, if I felt that there was a client or a company that wasn't really hitting the messages that needed to hit, I may reach out and try and assist them, or maybe give them some advice. But generally, you know, I think it really depends on the sector, I suppose, and it depends on the area of expertise. Yeah. So yourself, Susie or Melissa?
Yeah. For me, I'd be very slow to, I won't lie, I'd be very slow to reach out to you and say, that's not good. What I might do, and obviously I'm running a business as well, and if I thought I could add value for your business, I would point that out to you. but I would do it, as you rightly say, to be fair, in a constructive way, which would be more of, look, I saw you had this announcement, or I saw you did that. Would you not consider doing X and Y with it as well? I don't think I'd be pointing out what you did there was wrong, because I don't know the circumstances or the context. And also they might be getting advice from someone else, and, you know, you don't want to be unintentionally criticizing a colleague. So I would look to help. I suppose what I did do personally at the start of this was put out a message on LinkedIn saying that I was willing to help companies on the front line or not for profit and give them a free strategy session. And I truly meant it. And I did get requests for same. And I've worked with some phenomenal charities trying to help where I can, you know, from Kenya to local to whatever. So I suppose for me, that was a very genuine request, and I was quite nervous that people mightn't come back to me and people mightn't see it as genuine, but the response on LinkedIn was so incredibly positive. It was a very, for me, what I thought was a very small offering, but, you know, I think, I suppose I would, you know, in that instance, if someone had come to me and said, I need help, or I'm not doing this right, then I'd be very happy. They would be a non-client, but I'd be very happy to offer them constructive advice. But no, I personally wouldn't be emailing someone saying, I don't like your campaign, or, you know, even in a constructive way. I still think that would probably be the essence of what you were saying to them, but I would try and add value if I could.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's no point in doing that. You know, if your objective of reaching out to them is to try and, you know, work with them and telling them, the worst thing you can do for anybody is to tell them that you don't think that what they did was good, or that they're not managing things well. Okay, so I can see some questions again here now. So there's another. Sorry, Melissa, you have a point on that. Sorry.
No, you're grand with one.
Okay, great. Okay, so any advice? You can come in first on this one then. So any advice for those of us who will be last to open and will open with a huge glut of others? So this is relating to pubs.
So this is somebody who isn't a pub but is opening at the same time, and
I think
worry there that you get lost in all the noise.
Yeah, they either are a pub or they aren't a pub, but they're saying they're going to be the last to open. So assuming they're going to be one of the sort of most risky, I guess, or deemed risky by the policy to open. So they're wondering, I suppose, how do you cut through the noise? There's going to be a huge amount of businesses and opening up at the same time. So how do you cut through the noise?
I guess it goes back to what we were saying in terms of keeping the conversation going anyway, so that you're having that conversation with your community and with your customer base all along, so that you're not just shouting into the ether because they're listening to somebody else. But also for me, it comes back to, and this is why the key to being memorable is having that clearly defined tone of voice and telling the compelling story. So what stories can you tell now that will be compelling and that will stand out? And it's not about who shouts the loudest, it's about who's the most engaging, but also the most relevant, you know, and to be relevant, you have to be listening. So you have to, and to do that, you need to do your research. And so you need to be asking yourselves.
I think Melissa's frozen temporarily. You're on mute there, Aoife.
Sorry, another one's gone overboard. Sorry about this. So, well, this is a challenge. Yeah, thanks, Susie. You're going to go in there.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it's a very challenging situation to be in if you are one of many. I would say exactly what Melissa said. I would 100% concur with, you know, keep talking to your community, keep building your personality and your tone of voice. And I think what might help people understand what tone of voice means is, if your business was a walking, talking person, and they walked into the room here now, how would they sound? What would they say? What would they do? You know, your brand has a personality, so be true to that. Don't start panicking and spreading yourself too thin, but maintain communications on the platforms you have. Or if you don't have a platform, which could be the case, maybe you're new to social media or haven't had to use it in the past, just understand, you know, what would work for you. Or maybe if you're a local pub and you're very reliant on the local community, you might look then to, for example, advertise in your local paper or go on radio and talk about the challenges of reopening as a pub. But it really does. I would really encourage you not to wait till the 11th hour. And yes, it is very challenging, and I'm very aware of that, but know who your customers are and have a comms plan ready to reach out to them directly.
Yeah. And we're going to go, thanks, Susie, and we're going to go to the comms plan. I think we'll go now. If I just have a look and to see if there's one or two more questions. So Melissa's back. We've two Melissas on the screen. So we've really demonstrated today, I think, how the problems with zooming in today's climate. I think Zoom has just decided it's had enough. Okay, so so this was very interesting. Okay, can you give any advice for financial advisors? I presume that means communications advice for financial advisors. So it is quite a difficult situation they're in. And maybe Susie, you might, or Melissa, maybe Susie. Sorry, go, Susie.
Yeah, I mean, I have seen all kinds of everything in relation to financial advisors. It is very challenging. I won't deny that. I think what you have to do, I would suggest at this time, is look to add value on a bit of a loss leader situation, as in help people at this time, which is extremely challenging financially, and offer independent advice on how to navigate this. It could be on budgeting, it could be on loans, it could be on be aware of X or Y and maintain that level. Don't look to go straight to sales at the moment, which I don't think any industry should be doing anyway, because we're very sensitive to that. But I think if you can give added value content and insight, that's really, really good. And I would also say, though, do it in a way that, and I'm trying to think of a different word, but doesn't read as a little desperate. I received an email from a financial advisory house, and it was like, you know, you could tell they'd sent it to all, and it was like, we want to give you a bespoke budget, something or other. This was right after it happened, and it was the phraseology. It wasn't what they were offering. What they were offering was fantastic, but it was the phraseology in the email made me go, ooh, they're scrambling for clients, as opposed to, oh, they're trying to help me. That's a really positive outcome. So I suppose just watch your phrasing and make sure that you get the tone right, but definitely added value information. I will have the warm and fuzzies about brands who give me advice and help me at this time.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Susie. And Melissa, there's a question there for you actually as well. So if you have any other advice for financial advisors, fantastic, please share. And also somebody's asking here, was when you mentioned the publication earlier for food and advertising, was it the Sunday Business Post or the Times? I think it was the Post, but you could answer that.
Neither. It was the Irish Examiner.
Ah, the Cork. Yeah. Okay. Right.
Yeah, the Cork one. It's Joe McNamee. So it's the menu on the Irish Examiner. Is what it is. No, I think Susie was spot on in terms of what you said about the financial advisors, and it is really sensitive and it's tricky. But as long as you're seeking to help, then that's so important. And I'm just going to steal Susie's word that I've never heard before, phraseology. That's going to be my new word. I heard you say it, and then I was like, oh, she's going to say it a second time. Phraseology. Wrote it down because I'm going to use it. So that's my takeaway. Every day's a learning day, people. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. So thanks, Melissa. So before we have any more technical difficulties, I'm going to move into the finals, the final stage, just because we might as well go there. So we have, I'm just going to show you a communications plan. So what we want to leave you with is a communications plan. So something that you can build. You can take the advice that you've been given here, and you can build on that and maybe take it off yourselves and try and build your communications plan. So so obviously our key message here has been about trust. We've been talking about trust. Our key objective, I suppose, of our messaging is really about trust and how you communicate within that. So when you're building your plan, and Susie and Melissa were making the very good points about, who your media are, going out there and targeting them, writing your press release, writing your blog, whatever it is, creating really good content, or getting someone to create it for you if you're not good at creating content yourself, but getting your content together and pushing it out there into the media that is most suitable for your business. So number one, first of all, this is really based on mind mapping, really. So you can do this on a whiteboard, you can do it in a piece of paper at your desk, wherever you want to do it, but have a look at your business. What is your business? who is your audience? So who are you trying to speak to? Who are the people that you want to try and get the message across to? I suppose as you start to reopen, before you reopen, that audience is your employees, you know, to try and get them back or to try and put them on whatever wage schemes you're putting them on. And then as you start to build into the reopening, that becomes your customers and your clients if you're business to business. And maybe others like your shareholders. So have a look at your audiences and be really clear who your audiences are, because they will help you work out your messages and what you want to say. Then you've got your key messages. And these are really, we always encourage organizations when they're talking or speaking in the media to have, you know, a maximum of 3 messages. So just be very clear, have your key messages and know exactly what it is that you want to say in your communications, you know, and you can get that across then in a short snippet on Instagram, or you can get it across in a longer piece in, say, the Irish Examiner, like Melissa was mentioning there. You know, your key messages could be something like, in this instance, first of all, safety. You know, if you're a retailer, maybe you want to get that across. It's safe in the stores. Maybe you've tried to adapt the situation and you have new products and services, and you want to try and communicate those new products and services and what they are. So that could be your second message. And then maybe, you know, we're in a more environmental or socially conscious world. So people are going to expect maybe companies to be doing something for, you know, as Susie was mentioning there, the clients who she's been working with who've been producing PPE, or they used to do something else, and now they're actually creating face masks, fashion designers, that kind of stuff, that are designing face masks. Maybe you, as an organization, you're a retailer, you're a supermarket, and you want to give money to, or give a donation to charities that work with the elderly or something like that. So maybe have some sort of a corporate social responsibility message that you want to put out there as well. So have your 3 key messages, be really clear what they are. Know who your media are. So really know your media. So if you're a local business and most of your business is coming from the local area around you, well, then you really need to know the local media. You know, maybe you need to be on the local radio. Maybe, you know, you need to be on, you know, in the local newspaper, or whatever it is. Maybe you're a brand that connects, that sells clothes, or you're a beauticians, and it's really visual. And in that way, then maybe your medium of choice should be Instagram or something like that. So have a think about your media. Is it the news media you want to be in? Is it social media? Or is it local media? And really have your media and stick to it. And that doesn't mean that you have to just stick to that media only. You can go to the others as well, but just really understand what is your channel that's going to give you the most traction. And then your public relations tools, and both Susie and Melissa touched on those as well. And you know, you can find out more about these online if you do a quick Google search. You know, you've lots of tools at your disposal then. You know, you have your press announcement. You could do a press release. You could write up a press release. You could write up a blog. You could maybe produce a small video. Melissa was talking about the video that she produced for her niece, you know, so something, as long as, you know, it doesn't need to look absolutely polished, but it needs to look authentic, and it needs to be really clear and very, very clear in what you're trying to communicate. And then finally, I know you did a session yesterday on marketing, or some of you would have participated in the session on marketing. There's a whole lot of other activity depending on the type of budget that you have that you can get involved in. Susie had said as well that if you have your ad advertising budget at this point in time, now is the time to use it. And that's very true. So you could also support whatever communications activity you're doing with your, you know, branding and marketing. Everybody's going to be, you know, if you're a retailer, you're going to be covering the place in your 2-meter distance signs. But how do you want your brand to be positioned? Maybe your brand, you know, the happy branding that you have around the store, or the, you know, branding just doesn't work in this current climate. So maybe you need to have a look at your branding again. Look at your advertising. Where could you advertise? Online, offline, where? And what kind of promotions are you running in store? So we will leave that with you. And I know that Michael is going to put that up on the website, and that'll be available to you after this session as well. So what I'm going to do is thank Susie Horgan of Springboard PR and Melissa Curley of Be Social Communications. Social B or Be Social, Melissa? I'll let you correct that.
Social B.
Social B. So Susie Horgan from Springboard PR and Melissa from Social B, Melissa Curley from Social B. Thank you very much. Thank you for taking part and providing the information. Yeah, thank you.
Aoife, thanks a million. Thanks everyone.
Yeah, a pleasure.
And we're going to hand back to Michael to close off.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Aoife. And thanks also to Melissa and Susie. That was such an engaging session. The feedback has been brilliant. And thank you so much for your questions as well. We really appreciate them. So tomorrow, we're going to have our final session, which will be using live polls during the session. And we've put up just a short video to help you to understand how the live polls work and how we'll be using them tomorrow, because it'll make it just really engaging session and we think it'll be fantastic for you. So with that said, I'd like to thank everyone for today. Thank you so much for the businesses who joined us today from Chambers Ireland and the businesses around Ireland and also in Malta. That's fantastic. So we're delighted with that. Great to have such a wide-ranging audience with lots of different sectors and business types. So thank you from myself and all of the team. Thank you to Sean and Sinead for supporting today in Griffith College, Cork and Dublin. And we look forward to seeing you tomorrow for our final session. Do engage with us on social media using the hashtag Reboot2020. Also see the website for links to the resources, including the slides, the worksheet that was just shown there by Aoife, and all of the other presenter slides that have been shown throughout this series. We will share those online, but also the links to the mentoring as well and the other things that we have posted online. Tomorrow we'll be joined by Dr. Eddie Murphy, who some of you might recognize from television. So that is going to be a very engaging session, and we'll also be joined by Griffith College lecturer Dennis Coleman tomorrow. So until then, we'll see you tomorrow at 10:30, and thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.